everybody, and thanks for joining me for another episode of the Mash Maker Challenge. Tomorrow I'm going to be brewing another beer. I was planning on doing it today, but I got a little lazy. Didn't get up until probably 9 o'clock. Had an appointment with a customer. So I just figured I'd set everything up tonight, get everything ready to go so that I could just hit the ground running tomorrow and get the brew done. But tonight I want to share with you some tasting notes on the Steampunk entire porter that I brewed a couple episodes ago. So you may notice I have two bottles here. One is cold and one is at room temperature. So the reason why I am doing it this way is because a long time ago, when I was 21, I got a 6-pack of a porter for my 21st birthday. If any of you are watching from Michigan, you may remember a brewery called the Frankenmuth Brewery, and they had a porter that was called Old Detroit, and it was absolutely delicious. I got it every time I could possibly get it until the brewery was actually hit by a tornado, and I'm not sure if they rebuilt or not because I haven't been in Michigan since 2000, but their brewery and their beer that they made was amazing. I especially liked the porter that they brewed. So a buddy of mine knew a little bit about craft beers at the time, and he said you should drink this beer at room temperature. So I didn't believe him, never had a beer at room temperature before, so I threw them all in the fridge, and I drank one. I drank two that night on my birthday. I really didn't drink a lot on my 21st birthday, which was really strange. Probably, I had all that out of me by the time I turned 21. So by the time I turned 21, it wasn't really like, oh, let's go get wasted or whatever. Oh, let's go get wasted or whatever. It was just like, okay, just another night. But anyhow, I drank a couple beers that night cold, and I really liked them. But he kept bugging me to do it, so finally I took one out and I let it sit, and then I kind of forgot about it, and it sat out for about a week, and then I decided to open it up, and it was definitely a lot different. The flavor was much more robust, and it was a different experience altogether. So we're gonna crack both these right now, get them into the bottle. There we go, that one popped. So this is the cold one that I'm pouring right now. So I'm really kind of loving these flip top bottles for bottling beer instead of capping them. This is so much better. Ooh, that was nice too. Ooh, look at that, boy. There's a little bit of steam. Oh, it's gonna be warm, so it's gonna try to foam out a little bit. Both of them have really nice heads. All right, so here they are. All right, so first of all, we're gonna do a little bit of aroma. I'm gonna do the cold one first. Now on the cold one, there's definitely a lot of roastiness, some coffee notes, a little bit of chocolate. Maybe a little raisin, maybe some stone fruit, not too much. What I'm getting more on the cold one is the coffee and the chocolate and the roastiness. All right, here's the warm one. Okay, on the warm one, I'm getting more complex malt aromas and more of the fruitiness, or the raisin and the stone fruit maybe. Not getting as much of the roast. There is some there, but not too much. So I'm sure the warm one is going to be way more malty and a lot creamier than the cold one. But we'll start with the cold one first. All right, right off the top, Cold one has coffee, chocolate right off the top. Some roastiness. The hops are there. They're definitely there. But they're not overpowering. I think this is a well-balanced recipe for sure. Definitely good malty flavor to it, but mostly coffee and chocolate with a little bit of bitterness to kind of balance out that so it's not too sweet. Don O sent me a video the other day of him and Michael Dawson, the author of the book, tasting, because I sent a couple out to Chip, and Chip got one over to Don O, and Don O had a tasting with Michael Dawson, because Don O also brewed a beer, a Maibach, from the Mashmaker book. So he had Dawson over to his house, and they tasted it, and then they tasted my beer and a couple others that I sent out. And the video that they sent me wasn't posted on YouTube, because I think by the time they got to trying my beers, they were slightly in the bag. So, so it was fun to watch the video. And but Michael Dawson and Dono both gave me good reviews on the beer, so I was pretty happy about that, because those guys are a couple of the guys that I kind of started watching when I first got into brewing. And it was all Brewing TV, and then I discovered Dono through Brewing TV and started watching that. And then when I finished off Brewing TV, I was like, well, where are these guys now? And then I discovered that Chip was doing Chop and Brew, so I just kept going down the rabbit hole. And
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Oh, I am enjoying this scene.
Get on with it.
I'm going to do the warm beer now, because this is the one I'm looking forward to. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's totally different. Well, in the cold beer, the carbonation has a lot more bite. This is almost as if it's carbonated with nitro or nitrogen. So it's smoother. It's got a totally different mouthfeel. There's not as much bite from the carbonation. There's definitely some chocolate and coffee notes, but there's more malt, and the hops are balancing this out quite nicely. Here comes Brew Cat behind me. What's going on, Brew Cat? Yeah, she never used to want to be in YouTube videos, but now she seems a lot more comfortable. Oh, she's looking out the window. She's probably looking for another cat coming through or something. So anyhow, this is definitely smoother. Doesn't have as much bite. I think the hop contribution is about the same. It balances it out really nicely, and there's a lot of maltiness on the front side, and then as you swallow it, the hops kind of show up, and they sort of balance things out. So I'm pretty happy with this beer in general, and the room temperature one is fantastic. So now, unfortunately, I have 2 beers that I need to finish off tonight. So, which one? This one was the warm one. I'll have to pour this one, the rest of this, and I'll get the rest of the other one in here. I'm going to take these both upstairs and probably go down the YouTube rabbit hole for a little bit and watch a few videos tonight. So, hope you got something out of this. Definitely a beer that I think you should brew if you've got the book. If you don't have the book, you need to go download it. I don't think you can get a physical copy anymore. You might be able to find one here and there, but it is downloadable. I'll put a link for that downloadable version of the book in the description below. So, cheers, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another brew day. It's brew day number 4. I'm getting a lot of brews in early this year, so that's a good thing. Today we are brewing an oatmeal cream double stout. Let's go over the ingredient list for today. We're going to start with our base malt, Maris Otter, 8.5 pounds or 71%. And then we're going to move down to our specialty grains here. We got flaked oats, 1 pound or 9%. We got Crystal 120, 10 ounces or 6%. Pale chocolate malt, 14 ounces or 7%. And Perla Negra roasted malt, 14 ounces or 7%. Now in the book, you have the choice of a couple different roasted malts that you would or could go with. I chose Perla Negra. And 1 pound of lactose will be going in at the end of the boil. Our hops for today are Nugget, 1 ounce at T-minus 60, and that is it for the hops today. The yeast for today is London Ale 3 or 1318 Y yeast. And then, of course, there's an empty glass waiting for some 152 degree wort to be added to it. And then I will add the Balvenie Scotch for today. We will be mashing in today between 154 and 156, and then mash out at 170 for 5 minutes. Only going to add 1 addition of hops, that's T-minus 60, and then at flame out, we're going to be adding the lactose. That'll bring up the gravity a little bit. We are going to ferment this in the mid to upper 60s. And when activity begins to slow, we're going to warm it up to 70 degrees for 2 or 3 days for a diacetyl rest. So it should be about 10 to 12 days total for the fermentation process. Then we're going to rack over to the secondary for 1 to 3 weeks. It should be ready to drink in about 4 weeks total, maybe 4.5 weeks. I am going to split this batch, so I'm going to do 2.5 gallons in bottles because I'm going to give half of this batch away to my wife's chiropractor. The other 2.5 gallons, I'm thinking about putting some coffee on and maybe maybe 1 vanilla bean. So there are these options also that he says at the end of the page here. He says you could do some modifications: coffee beans, vanilla beans, oak, cherries, put a little bread on it, maybe some cocoa nibs. So I guess the choice is up to you as far as what you want to add. I'd love to add cherries. I just don't have any cherries right now. That would be really good. A cherry coffee, that would be really interesting. I've got one more thing to add. Forgot to go over the salt additions for today. Today's profile, the water profile that I picked, is going to be 180 parts per million of calcium, 10 parts per million of magnesium, 75 parts per million of sodium, 85.3 parts per million for sulfate, 341.2 parts per million for chloride, and 50 parts per million for bicarbonate. So here's my, this is going to be my mash additions and my sparge additions, which again, it's going to be different for you unless you're using the exact same water that I'm using. So I do run my water through a filter to get out the chlorine, or as much chlorine as possible, because we don't want that in the beer. So after I'm done with that, I just plug in what water profile I'm going for, depending on what kind of beer I'm brewing, whether it's an IPA, a stout, pale ale, saison, whatever. And then it basically just gives me a list. So Beersmith kind of does that for you. You don't have to do the calculations. You just plug in your water profile, what's coming out of your tap, or if you're using RO water, that's just going to be all 0. And then you plug in what profile you want. That gives you exactly what you need to add. So it's that simple. All right, enough talking. Let's get to the brew day. Well, it's time to try the hot scotchy for today. So let's get some scotch in here. Throw about a shot, maybe a little less. Smells roasty, but that scotch adds a little bit of sweetness to it. All right, well, that's different. It's like a watered down mocha latte. That's but a little roastier. Maybe a little roastier than it. Not so sweet and milky. Not my favorite hot scotchy, but not bad. Not bad. I mean, I can't complain on this one. Just isn't, it's way more roasty and more coffee-like than I would care for. Maris Otter is definitely being covered up by the chocolate malt and the Perla Negra. I wouldn't recommend it, but not a bad hot scotchy. Got to keep the tradition going. I don't know, I'm getting close to 160 brews now. I'd have to count. But I've had a hot scotchy for every one of them. So this is down on the list, but still not bad. We have reached the end of another brew day, and I'm about to open up another porter. Now, this is not my porter. My buddy Dan stopped over a little earlier today. You may remember him from a few episodes ago when I did the Doppelbock, and he brewed a Doppelbock also, and then we did tasting notes on that. He's also brewed a porter just recently. So it seems like we're brewing the same beers all the time. He said it's a little overcarbonated, so I'm going to pour it kind of... Yeah, it's definitely overcarbonated, but that's all right. I'm just going to pour it nice and slow. Okay, we're back. And had to wait a couple minutes for it to settle down. But it's looking pretty good now. Does have a good head on it. It's got a little roastiness to it, but not too much. Let's give it a shot. Other than it being slightly overcarbonated, it's really good. It does have a little roastiness to it. I'd say more coffee notes than chocolate notes. I'm not getting much of any type of fruit flavors or any raisin or anything like that. But that might be just because the carbonation's kind of covering that up. I wonder what this would be like if it was warmed up a little bit. I have 5 more bottles of it, so I'm going to have to try it that way too. It's very smooth, very drinkable. The bitterness is right on point. Not too bitter, but kind of takes those coffee and roasty notes away pretty quick. Drinks kind of like a dark lager. It's very good. Anyhow, I want to touch on a couple more things. The Brewday was pretty good, except for one thing that happened. When Dan showed up, I was actually just getting ready to put the strike water into my mash tun. So I was transferring the strike water from the hot liquor tank to my mash tun, and I had to put about 5 gallons in. So I hit 5 gallons and I turned off the pump. Well, I forgot to turn off the valve. So gravity kept the water going in, and I didn't even notice it because I was busy talking to Dan at the time. And so I mashed in, and as I was putting in my grain, I noticed that it was much higher, or the water level was much higher in the pot than normal for a 5-gallon batch. And then I realized what was going on. By the time I realized it, there was already 8.5 gallons of water in the mash tun, and it already poured in pretty much all of the grains. So I did not do a sparge today. I just did first runnings, and that was it, which kind of messed with my efficiency a little bit. So I came out after adding the lactose. It was around 1064, and I needed to be at 1072. So I added about a cup of light DME to the mix, and that brought it right up to 1072. So that was pretty much the only mess up I had for today, and that's never happened to me before, and it probably will never happen again because now I'll be paying attention. One other thing I'd like to touch on is I'd like to thank everybody who has subscribed and who's been with me from day one. I've been doing this a little less than a year now, and the other day I hit 250 subscribers. Now I know that's small potatoes compared to a lot of other channels out there, but for me it was a goal to reach 250 before the end of February, and I'm at 253 right now. So if you're watching this video and you haven't subscribed yet, please do. My goal by the end of summer is to get to 500, and my lofty goal by the end of the year is to get to 1,000. Cheers, everybody. Have a great day. Enjoy this week, and I'll see you again in a couple of weeks.